Thanks for all of your help. Without your help, we would not have been able to work through all of the technical issues that we've had with this. So we really appreciate it. I'm Vicki Glass, a learning facilitator with SAPDC.
Marion begins the learning facilitator with SAPDC.
John Lurie, I'm the Executive Director with SAPDC, which is the Southern Alberta Professional Development Consortium.
We are very happy to have all of you joining us today. We have over 100 registrants, and we stretch from border to border, north to south, east to west, and we appreciate that you've joined us so early this morning. We're going to unshare our camera and begin the presentation. Just want to check whether there are any difficulties with seeing or hearing. So because we have so many attendees, this webinar will be a little bit different than typically if you participated in the past. We won't be asking a lot of interactive questions, but we will ask you to enter questions as they occur to you in the chat box. We will be pausing every few slides to answer questions. So please don't wait until we pause to type in those questions. We do value your participation. We just have a lot of information to share with you. We also know that there may be questions that you have that we will be unable to answer. You may contact your local consortia for additional support. This webinar will be cached, so you will be able to join it again to review and look at things. You also will get the link to all of this PDF, so you don't need to be taking notes. You will have all of that available. So one of the great things about the second year of the pilot program is that Alberta Education has been listening. They are very responsive to the changes that were requested and have tried to streamline and meet the needs of all of the teachers across Alberta. It continues to be a pilot year, and so working together will continue to improve the teaching and learning process for students. This slide shows the two booklets that will be delivered to your school, and we'll be going through the process in just a moment about how you will request those booklets. As we go through, we're not going to read all of the slides to you, but we will just highlight some of the information that we feel you will need to know. So what is the same and what's different? One of the things that has been said is that, sorry, we're going to try to be a little louder here. One of the things that has been said is if you're going to do something fast, do it alone. If you're going to do something well, do it together. And Alberta Education had a very short time frame to do something fast for us last year. In the pilot, they tried to involve others, but some of the concerns that were reflected in the field were not addressed last year. This year, you will be very happy to see how responsive Alberta Education has been. One of the biggest changes that affects teachers who are doing the paper-only version is the provision of all of the slides and appropriate dialogue, and you will be very pleased to see that. Sound is much better. Thanks for that comment, so that we can ensure that everyone can hear. You will also note that there are less reflections and they will be more appropriate to the kind of students that you are working with. At your school, you will receive all of the copies of everything you need to prepare for the administration and for your students. This means that less time will be required for the printing and preparing, something that presented a challenge to many of you last year. Also, in the time frame, there will be a much longer time than was given initially to administer. You will also have access to the information as early as September 1st, depending on when your requests are submitted. After you've received and completed your tasks, the booklets will need to be returned to Alberta Education. You will want to do that as early as you can. There are between 800 and 1,000 booklets that need to be marked, and the marking will begin when there are enough booklets to make it worthwhile. The data analysis that will happen cannot begin until all of the booklets have been received. So it will be very important that as soon as you have completed your booklet tasks, you return them to Alberta Education. Additional things that are the same and different. The testlets that are in the booklet can be responded to directly on the booklets, so the students are able to draw, plan, and answer right in the booklets. They're expected to use manipulatives and additional paper and pencil while they're completing those activities. There are no time limits on any of the information. There are suggestions in the user guide, but students can be given breaks whenever they need them. It's very important to keep them engaged. There is no marking of the initial booklets, the booklets that have been converted from the digital literacy and numeracy. Those will all be returned to Alberta Education for marking, and so there's no marking that you will need to do of those, only the performance assessments. There's no reason for you to try to determine whether students got the right answer or not, as the questions levels are weighted by complexity, and so a raw score would be meaningless. There will be no raw score then given to you immediately after your delivery. Now we're going to pause for questions. If you are good, if you can put up your agree sign, that would be great. If there are some things that aren't clear or some concerns, so many of the technical issues Eric will be trying to work on. If it's just cut out, it may be. If I just cut out, it may be because we were pausing.
Yeah, probably. So the sound is back. No worries about that. If you can just make sure to speak near the microphone to have the sound a little louder, but that's better than at the beginning.
Thank you.
Well, if there are no questions, then we'll continue. This is Marion speaking now. So how do you request a paper version? You check with your jurisdiction regarding who will be sending in this request and ensure that that person has all of the information they need as soon as possible, specifically before September the 8th. But don't wait. The materials will be shipped as the requests are received. What else is the same and what's different? Well, this year you will not be required to get onto the dashboard, and you will receive hard copies of the user guides along with the student booklets. You're going to want to review the user guide before you administer the assessments. That's on or after September 14th. That's when you can start to administer. You'll want to start to familiarise yourself and your students with the types of tasks that are in the assessments. What else is the same or different? Well, with the performance tasks, They're going to be marked locally by November 1st. That means marked at your sites. So neither the responses nor the results are to be submitted to Alberta Education. Last year you sent the results to them. This year you will not. These are for you. There is no provincial or jurisdiction release of results. The results are for you, your students, your administration and the parents. The purpose is to support student learning. You will receive this list of students template with your paper copies of the SLA. On the template, the classroom teacher will record the student's name and their status and their student number. If a student is excused from writing by their parent, they are to be marked absent. Only a superintendent can excuse a student from writing. I'm going to draw your attention to the legend at the bottom. The last two columns are where you will put that information in. So we're going to stop for some questions.
We understand that some people are having issues with the sound. Some people are okay. We'll continue to try to speak into the mic. We see that some people are typing, and so we'll try to wait to see if those are questions for us. If you are good to go, just show us that you agree, that we can move forward. I guess we shouldn't have dead airspace because then people think the sound has gone. So we're going to move forward, and as the questions come in, we will try to answer them. So you are going to receive all of the information that you need and all of the material that will be necessary for ensuring that the booklets are shipped back to Alberta Education. It's very important for you to realize that the security of the assessments is the responsibility of the teacher, and it is in effect from September 1st to November 1st. You will not be able to start the assessments until the September 14th date, but you will be able to see what your students are going to be expected to do. You need to make sure that your booklets are kept secure all through that period because some of the questions may be used again. With your shipping labels, you'll want to ensure that you've stored your shipping and labeling materials safely and that you remember where they are so that you can access them when you need them. Again, remember that the reports coming back to you will be dependent on early returns of the materials. So they are not promising a November 16th release of the reports. They're hoping that everyone will have their booklets returned by October 16th. So the earlier you can do it, the better it will be. So what are SLAs? Basically, SLAs are a beginning of the year, a formative assessment tool that we are working together to develop to improve the teaching learning process in the province. Through this, we are hoping to identify the students' strengths and areas for growth at the beginning of the year. It is all based on the current program of studies and the grade 2 exit outcomes in numeracy and literacy. For the past few years, we've been working with a draft definition of numeracy and literacy, and these have been finalized. So the new definitions are included here, and they are also in the materials that you will be receiving. As you can see, looking at both definitions, they reflect a better alignment and a clearer understanding that numeracy and literacy affect and enhance all aspects of daily life. In the past, the provision of the SLA was optional, but 95% of schools chose to participate in the first year of the pilot. So Alberta Education has collapsed the provincial achievement test, and all schools will be participating. It is mandatory for all schools to participate in the grade 3 SLA. We will continue in a pilot phase until Alberta Education is confident that the process is going to work for all teachers and students. So the grade 6 and 9 PATs will continue in the near future. It is very much in your best interests, especially in sites where you are going to be the grade 6 and 9 teachers, that you ensure that your voice is heard and that you give feedback to Alberta Education so that they can help develop something that is going to be beneficial and useful in your context. We know it's a very different context than many of the others. Who writes the SLAs is listed here. We need to know that all students above are expected to write all 4 of the SLA components, and the changes and revisions that have been made will make it a lot easier for your students to participate appropriately. The last part of this section is that a teacher supervises the administration and the marking of the SLA, and so those are duties that may not be assigned to an educational assistant. It does not say that the grade 3 teacher, so it could be a different teacher, but it must be a teacher who is supervising. We'll pause now to answer questions.
I can see that Dan Ryder has asked if any of the SLA documents have been shipped to jurisdictions, and if you have requested them, they will start to ship them as of September 1. They have to be requested first. And there's a question about which parts are marked locally. The only part that you mark is the performance task. So there is a literacy performance task and a numeracy performance task, and you will mark those and you will share those with your students, with parents, and your administration only. Okay, there are more questions, we'll answer them, but we'll move along because we're okay. So we'll move on. If Alberta Learning is not going to use this information, then why is it being shipped to them? The information that is being shipped to them is the booklet, because that has to be marked by them, because the questions are weighted according to difficulty, so there is no answer key coming to us, coming to teachers. There's a question, how are we expected to administer this in a multi-graded classroom? And that's going to have to be worked out between you and your colony principals or your jurisdiction leaders so that you can have time to administer the grade 3 SLA. There's a question, will answer keys for the booklets be provided even though teachers do not have to mark the booklets? No, there will be no answer keys because the questions the questions are weighted according to the challenge level. So there's no use to you to mark them. There's partial marks, there's full marks. And also they have said that when they look at all of them, if there is a question that by nature of the way it was translated into a paper document, it's now unfair, then they will throw out that question. There's a question, does Alberta Education not want to know the writing ability of students across the colonies? This is across the province. No teachers are sending in their performance tasks with materials to help you to mark the performance task, and at a later date your consortium people will be able to help you with that, to facilitate marking and give you some insight into what to be looking for. But no one at this point is going to be sending in the written portion of the performance task to Alberta Education. The part of this focus in the SLA is that it is to help teachers, it is not monitoring teachers. There's still someone, Vanda's still typing a question. Oh, multiple attendees are typing, so I'll hold off for a few minutes before we move on.
Question. Are the students going to be doing the performance task and the booklet at the same time, or are they two different, or we consider them two different tasks?
It's hard for us to hear that question. I think if you can type it, that would be better, but that would be a jurisdiction decision. One more person asking a question. So, what was the question? I think the question was, we do not share info with our central office, and that's a jurisdiction decision. Okay, so we will move on. So this chart shows the components and the elements of literacy progressions. If you remember, they were called benchmarks. The term progressions better reflects the continuum of literacy and numeracy development. So that is now the word that we are using. You will see that we have struck out literacy awareness in this chart. That's because awareness is not being assessed at this time. What's being assessed is literacy knowledge and understanding. All of this has been streamlined in response to teacher comments. These elements, the rules of language, acquiring information, constructing meaning, and communicating meaning, are all linked to the outcomes of the English Language Arts program. And these are the components of the numeracy program, the numeracy progressions. Again, awareness will not be assessed. The four elements being assessed for numeracy align with the front matter of the math program of studies. The new assessment also reflects the clarification to the K-9 program of studies, and this link will take you to a clearly written parent document where it was clarified that recall and memorization are part of the math program of studies. The second link that's there, which says videos at the end, these are excellent videos prepared by Alberta Education, and you may want to look at this resource to help you as you ensure that you are looking at the math strands. So how do we prepare students for the SLA? Teachers are encouraged to provide opportunities for students to engage with practice questions. Where you see performance tasks, we have linked the digital performance tasks here. If you have a picture of a red fox and you access the Administration Guide for Teachers, page 7 has the script for audio and video, and it has guidelines for leading the students through the 4-part literacy performance task. These links take you to that performance task, this one, this page, and the next. Those are available for you to look at after this session. It will be important to take breaks as and when students need them. In the numeracy practice task, for example, it will be important to take a break between the first and second activities, because additional information is provided for the students so they can demonstrate their understanding in a new context, and so that they realise they are doing a different though connected activity. Reviews from last year's performance tasks indicated that teachers found students were fatigued, so be sure to give them breaks. Performance tasks should be completed over at least 2 to 3 sessions. Now we have some questions and we're just going to respond to those right now.
So first of all, the question about how does numeracy awareness differ from learner awareness? Basically, all teachers across the province are expected to be helping students develop literacy and numeracy throughout all grades in all subject areas. So learner awareness in every subject is what you would help children be aware of, or students be aware of, in that specific discipline. Numeracy awareness is how does numeracy affect their daily life? How do the principles of mathematics affect the science that they're learning? How does it affect how that will translate into their daily life? Again, your consortia are available to help with developing skills in literacy and numeracy, and if we need further clarification, you can contact your regional consortiums. Page 3 of the administration dates, I'm not sure, but maybe there was a question of, I've got it, question of what are they? So the digital interactive questions are from September 14th to October 9th. Those are what you are going to receive in booklet form. So you will have from September 14th to October 9th to administer. The performance tasks you may administer anytime from September 14th to November 1st. So there was a question, do we do them all at the same time? It is up to you with your professional judgment to decide on the context that you're working in. Will it be helpful for the students to be working on the tasks in linear matter, or are they prepared to be able to work on the booklets and the performance assessments at the same time? Because these will be available for you to preview earlier than last year, you will be able to plan what you'd like to do. We want to make sure that everyone is aware that there was a colony teacher involved in the process of developing the responsive assessment that has been developed this year. There were also First Nations, Métis, and Inuit representatives, as well as representative teachers, parents, and administrators working on the committee to try to improve not only the SLA 3, but learning and assessment across the province. There are some excellent materials that have been prepared and are on the website for you to look at. Alberta Education has also said that they are very open to suggestions and are looking at receiving feedback from you again this year. Again, many schools are in the setting where they have multiple grades in the small rural schools, where people are working together to try to come up with solutions as to how to administer these tasks effectively while still engaging the other students. Yes. And if you want to read Victoria's answer, that might be a good suggestion. We're going to move forward, and we will continue to answer questions, so thank you for typing in your questions. This is what the assessment booklet will look like. The first one shows more of what will be in the literacy assessment. It's important to remember that you will only be able to read the pieces that have the graphic of a teacher's head to the class, because what we're trying to determine is what can the students read and understand independently. In the numeracy assessment, you may read everything except the answer choices. And I'll give you the rationale for that in a moment. The next two slides provide examples from the literacy booklet. As you can see, there are no graphics that would allow you to read any of this to the students. So students would be expected to read that independently and answer those questions unless they have special provisions, and we will also address that. One of the things you will want to be prepared for is that the questions in the booklets, the literacy and numeracy booklets, will require different types of responses. So I'm going to walk you through this part in detail just so that you can be thinking of ways that you might want to construct parallel types of activities for your students to practice. So if there is one answer, one number or a letter, there will be a dotted rectangle for the answer to actually be written in the dotted box. There will be some answers where there is only one correct answer and the students would color in the box, the circle, I'm sorry. If there are square boxes, it will indicate that more than one answer must be chosen. And this was a point of confusion last year, so having your students understand this part would be very helpful to them. They need to put a check mark in more than one box. And then the last type of question that they will experience will be drawing answers or drawing lines to show the correct answers. There are little dots there that they can practice connecting. There will be some practice questions in the front of the booklet, but you may wish to help your students by constructing some parallel types of activities to practice either on a chalkboard or whiteboard or paper and pencil tasks. Now looking at the numeracy booklet, we are allowed to read everything to the students except the possible answers. So in the numeracy booklet, you could read this whole paragraph, the beginning of use the information to complete the question. You can read this whole page to your students. They are also allowed to read it to themselves. You cannot read the choices. So when it comes to the choices, you can read the bolded part that says from the list, choose 4 supplies a dog needs, but you would not be able to read to them the answers. Now, the rationale behind that is that this would be a single challenge for students who are listening to a paragraph and students who will have the paragraph in front of them, such as this, so that they can see and reread. The other students are able to re-listen, and so are your students. You can reread this to them, but they must independently read the answers so that it is a single challenge being presented to all of the students across Alberta. So that would be something to give feedback to Alberta Education about how that works. They're trying to make it as equitable as possible. These are additional examples from the numeracy booklet, and again, just showing that the bolded part you may read to the students, but not the answers. We're going to take a look at responding to the literacy questions, because it's very important that we prepare students to ensure that they've reviewed these basic processes and understand what is going to be expected of them. When you look at the information in the first bullet, that students will need to know how to obtain information from pictures, photographs, and other representations. We need to ensure that this is reflected in our teaching practice, so that what we've been using to help students gain information is what is actually being assessed for students. We need to help them understand that the correct or best answer is what they are looking for. And all of the other bullets you definitely use in your daily practice with students, but it's good to review it with them. The numeracy questions as well in the first bullet talks about making sure that students know that they're going to be obtaining information from numbers, words, signs, charts, pictures, graphs, or maps. And so we'll want to ensure that, again, this is reflected in the teaching that we've done with the students. In particular, are your students familiar with unifix cubes and representing tens and ones with pictures and drawings? Are they familiar with hundreds charts, as those might be things that they will be exposed to? Now we're going to pause again to answer some of the questions that have come up. Please continue to question in the chat box. Thank you.
So there was a question, does the digital version not read everything to students? Well, it doesn't in the literacy. There is, the students are expected to read, and someone else has answered that further on, that that's the point, is it's a literacy test. And the other one was the numeracy isn't testing literacy, so we can read it. That's exactly right. That's why you're able to read it. Except the answers. Is there anything else there? Karen has said that not reading to the students gives her a clear indication about where her students are at in their reading. When we get a little bit further on here, we're going to talk about some of the supports that are available for students as well. Gary has asked, will the materials be sent to Division Office for distribution to colony schools? The materials will be sent to your school. So, earlier we did say that only the superintendent may excuse students. And this is what the superintendent would have to do to excuse a student. The student would have to be not capable of responding to the assessment, or the participation would be harmful to the student. And there is that form that we showed earlier, that template, that's where it would be marked that the student is excused. If a parent withdraws from participation, it's called absent. It's not excused. Assistive features for students. Students may access readers and scribes for the SLA if these conditions are met. The students' parents, teachers, and administrator have agreed that the support is necessary, and the student has an IPP or a learning plan explaining how the student's reading needs will be addressed. So you may have a reader and a scribe as long as in the IPP or learning plan you have addressed how you're going to help that student to develop the skills, and you have to have support from the parent, the teacher, and the administrator. When you are marking these, you're going to have to remember that you have to interpret the results in a way that reflects the use of the learning support. You will not be sending that information to Alberta Education. Students in English as a second language programs and those in special education programs are expected to complete the student learning assessments unless they are excused by the superintendent. So the use of dictionaries is prohibited, since this is about what students can do independently. The use of calculators, paper, pencil, and manipulatives. Calculators can not be used, and that is in line with the programme of studies for grade 3. Paper, pencil, and manipulatives can be used. I think Vicky said that earlier. But there is one section of the booklet which is number facts, and then you may not use manipulatives. Remember that update that we talked about for the math? Have a look at that. That's what it's about. Math, recall, and memory is what is being assessed in the number facts section. So we'll pause here and answer some questions. Some schools do not have mailboxes. If you don't have a mailbox, then it's going to have to go to wherever you access your mail. So your jurisdiction will organise that for you. Dan has asked if a student is not writing with the superintendent's permission, is that excused? They must have the permission. The student must be excused by the superintendent. Can students on an IPP have a scribe read the question and choices? Yes. If the student has an IPP or a learning plan, then they can have a scribe and a reader as long as you have in that IPP or learning plan how you are addressing the student's inability to write or read. Jan said for PATs we needed to have testing done before we were allowed to use scribes or readers. No, you do not need testing done. As long as you have the learning plan or the IPP. And good point, Karen, it's a planning tool. This is what it's for. It's to find out what the student can do independently at the beginning of the year so that you know how to plan. Okay, so we'll just move on to the schedules and significant dates. You need to ensure that your superintendent has all the information needed to request your paper copies before September 8th. Preferably much before, because you will want to have time to have a look at these. The student learning assessments must be administered according to the dates that are indicated in this schedule. So September the 14th to October the 9th, a 4-week time frame for the booklet. September the 14th to November 1, a 7-week time frame for the performance tasks.
So this is where we were going to pause for additional questions. Karen's point is very well taken here, that we are in a process of shifting thinking from testing students to doing a formative assessment that will help identify strengths and areas of need for the students so that it can improve the teaching and learning process. Also, Heather's question, do we need a request in grade 2, the accommodations we're requiring in grade 3, or can we do so at the beginning of the school year? Many of your IPPs or learning plans will not be in place at this point in time. We know that they're not even expected to be completed until October 30th. So as long as you are intending to put those accommodations in a student's IPP or learning plan, you can provide the supports that will help make the students successful. Remember that all across the province, any students who are registered in ELL or special education programs shall participate in the SLA, because this is a process to help us find out what can we do as professional teachers to move our students forward in the context that we're working. Elizabeth has also strengthened the information. It's a snapshot of the student's current ability, and it's only one small piece of the assessment tools that teachers are using. It's not intended to replace all of the wonderful assessments and formative work that you are doing with your children to determine what their needs and strengths are. We'll move forward with the final part of reporting. So we have covered the idea that the reporting of the paper copy results will be mailed directly to you. You will be marking the performance assessments, but again, that is for your information and does not need to be reported to Alberta Education. The reports that are provided to you about the booklets are expected to be shared with the parents. You are encouraged to share the performance information. It's also advisable that you keep that performance assessment on file and even re-administer it later in the year to demonstrate the growth of your students. So that is available for you to use. The interpretation of the results need to take into account the context of the student and the activities that were happening in the classroom. So that is best done with an interview, a conversation between the parent and the teacher involving the student if that's in their best interest. The consortiums across the province will be offering sessions on how to interpret and use the report and the data to improve student learning. And so on the next slide, you'll see all of the consortia that are available throughout the province. On those links, there are maps also to provide you with the area that each of those consortia serve in case you're not sure which one you should be contacting. And the final slide that we have prepared for you today will give you additional information about the SLA 3 pilot. Remember that it is a pilot, and so we want to just relax, use it to best help our students. The SLA website is the first link, and that will give you all. You will be receiving hard copies of those, but you may wish to preview them earlier. There are all of the general information bulletins that have all of the information that you can review that we've presented here today in a condensed format. The other link will take you to another condensed review of the update to the SLAs. It is only 3 pages, so it's easy to read and review to see if your understanding matches with what you think you've heard today from our presentation. So in conclusion, we'd like to remind you that we want to answer questions before we do a conclusion, and we see that there are several people typing. The recording of the presentation link, the webinar will be cached, and each of the consortiums will have a link to it on their websites, and you'll be able to access this. Sorry, we will send out information about that after the webinar. For everyone who is registered, we do have your emails. We're also asking if you have multiple people at your site, if you could collect their emails for us. Alberta Education is trying to determine the numbers of people who have been involved with the sessions and ensuring that we're spreading the information as well. Okay, we have just been given from our director. The link is learning.arpdc.ab.ca. So thanks to John Laree, and we'll confirm that with Eric to make sure that that's the correct information.
There was one question.
Yeah, so the recording, the recording will be available soon, and you can probably go on the SAPDC website to see where exactly you can view it.
Thank you. There was one question from Vanda. She asked about whether or not you need to access the dashboard, and you don't. You do not need to access the dashboard. And we've just put the link here, and we'll also send it to everyone who has registered for the webinar, so you can link it from your site. Are there other questions to ask that you need to ask today? Hope multiple attendees are typing, so I think so.
I'm just going to go forward with the conclusion, and then we will look through the questions to make sure that we are answering them for you, but our time is drawing near. So what do we need to remember to take away from this session this morning is that the SLA 3 is a pilot. The results will not be compared. They will not be reported at a jurisdictional level. They will not be reported to the public. Much of the information is not being reported to Alberta Education. It is being provided for you to be able to help the teaching and learning process. We want to note that Alberta Education has been very responsive to the concerns that they heard last year. They attended every convention and were very receptive to hearing your concerns and the challenges. We share the responsibility in continuing to provide feedback so that together we can develop a tool that will help meet the needs of all teachers, students, and parents to improve the teaching learning process. So we encourage you to give additional feedback to your consortium reps or directly to Alberta Education so that we can continue to work together in this process. We also are doing a very big shift in thinking. There are some wonderful resources that have been prepared, and if you take a look at them, they will translate into all of the teaching and learning that you're involved with students, many rubrics that you will not have to reinvent, and Alberta Education has worked very hard with teachers across the province to try to address the concerns. So we wish to thank you for your participation today. All of those who registered will receive an evaluation in your mailbox. We need to ask you at this busy time of year to take a few minutes to complete those evaluations so that we, as consortiums, can have that information to present to Alberta Education about whether this was a valuable way of presenting collecting information. We're still open for questions, so if there are more questions at this time, if not, you can give us an agree sign, and we thank you so much for your attention and appreciate any of your ideas that you may share in the future with us.
Thanks everyone. It's been great seeing all of you writing there, and I hope both of the Jans make it back home today.